As Superintendent of Schools, I present to you the 2021 school year budget. Thank you to the Administrator of Business Operations, Mr. Bruni, to the Board of Education, and to the entire administrative for all of their work in preparing this year's budget. Before I start with the budget details, I'd like to say thank you to all of our employees for the work they are doing during this time of building closures due to the pandemic. I would also like to thank all of the parents and guardians for all that you are doing to support your children through the distance learning model. And to all the first responders and essential workers who are attending to our needs as a society, thank you. Now moving forward with the presentation. The district mission statement. It's the district's goal to continuously evaluate programs and provide opportunities that are relevant to today's learner, with an emphasis on a positive and safe environment while always striving for excellence. Thank you to the board members for all that you do all year long for our school community. Your commitment to the district and education of our students is greatly appreciated. The district's strategic plan is moving us from traditional learning to a learning model that is centered on engagement and empowerment. This learning model is student-centered, but also empowers the faculty members as well. The plan was designed with the goal of helping all of us better understand the mental health needs of our students to create conditions that allow students to be engaged and empowered lifelong learners. Collecting data will allow us to provide targeted, differentiated, and personalized instruction where applicable and appropriate to achieve growth. The district appreciates the strong community partnerships, which allows for more opportunities for students and staff. It is our goal to continue to grow in these areas. So when we look at the strategic plan and the budgetary implications, there's a number of additional items for the 2021 school year that align with the strategic plan. The engaged and empowered lifelong learners, data-informed decision-making, and the school community connections. And you can see at the end of each one of these additions are the abbreviations for those different areas. You can see we're focusing on curriculum and instruction and ways to engage and empower lifelong learners. We continue to improve upon how and what data we collect to be more efficient and effective in supporting our students' needs. And we are continuing to look for additional ways to build upon the community partnerships and opportunities for our students. So again, you can see we put focus on the next generation learning standards as we continue to roll those out. We're adding courses at the secondary level as well as the elementary level with the STEAM program, which aligns well with the standards that are being put out by New York State. We're adding additional resources to the special education program to continue to improve that. Looking at updating devices and software, which one helps with the engagement and empowerment of students, and also you can see the importance of technology given the situation that we've been in most recently with the pandemic. We're adding professional development for transportation employees and special education staff. Adding a guidance counselor, so that's transitioning a teaching assistant to a guidance counselor position, which has been part of a 3-year process. And again, will greatly connect our students in regards to careers and college experiences, just trying to identify what students want to do, find that passion, if you will, and help them navigate that path post-graduation. And it also will allow us to build upon the partnerships that we have with the community. Implementing a MTSS data software, so that multi-tiered system of supports that we've been building upon each year. The software is just going to enhance what data we collect, how we collect it, and then how we utilize that to more efficiently and effectively meet the needs of our students. And then the addition of a countywide grant writer, so all 4 districts in the county partnering to cover the cost of this grant writer. But oftentimes we lose out on grants because we don't have somebody who is specific to our county and knows our county well. That's very important in grant writing. and we don't have that resource at this time. And so we see this as a revenue generating resource, as well as another means or possibility for connecting the community and school district and providing opportunities for our students. So this is just an overview of the agenda and talking about the development of the budget for the 2021 school year. So we're just going to walk through these different categories for the rest of the presentation. So here you have a couple of pie charts that show the overall budget review. So these are the three main parts of the budget for both expenses and revenue. And you can see we're getting closer each year to state aid being 50% of our revenue. So first thing we'll talk about are the appropriations. And so this is just looking at that pie chart, excuse me, of program, capital, administrative. Here we're getting beyond just the percentages and giving you dollar amounts. This also shows the expenditures within each of those categories. So when you look at programming, that biggest area making up over 77% of our budget, that's the salary and benefits of all instructional and non-instructional staff, instructional equipment, materials, supplies, summer school programming, instructional media programs and technology, our pupil services, our athletics and extracurricular activities, and transportation. And then capital, you have operations and maintenance costs for custodial staff, capital project debt service and utilities, and then the administrative at 95.5%, which is salaries, benefits of administrators, supervisors, and administrative clerical staff, financial system oversights, Board of Education budgeting, BOCES administration and rent, tax collection, and legal services. So I previously shared some new expenses or additions to this year's budget and how they connected to the strategic plan. This slide shows the reductions we have made to the budget, including items we were considering as additions but cut them from the budget throughout the budget development process. One of the first ones listed there that we were looking to add in the general budget but decided to cut out was UPK. So the board was ready to include UPK into the general budget this year. We continued to apply for a grant and are not successful in getting that grant, but we will continue to apply if that is offered. And that's where we hope a grant writer will be important to our success in securing that grant, which could lead to hundreds of thousands of dollars for us. As I said, we cut that out. One of the reasons for that, major reason for that, is that the governor has said we may see reductions in our state aid throughout the school year, and we're not sure, when those could come, how much that could be, and certainly if that is the case and we have to make reductions throughout the year, we didn't want to start a new program and then turn around and have to cut it. That would not be good for certainly our students, would not be good for families overall, and would not be good for staffing purposes. So we decided, based on what he's saying could happen this coming school year in regards to aid reductions, that normally is not the case. But with that being the possibility, we felt this was not the best time to start a UPK program. You'll see a reduction in debt service, the capital bond payoff. So we are receiving less aid because we paid off one of our capital projects going back to 2010. And so with the reduction in expenses, there's a reduction in revenue, which makes sense, but it is a reduction in revenue for the 2021 school year. And then the Seneca Falls Education Association moving to a high deductible plan was a considerable savings for the district this year. We also had several retirements from this group that brought a healthy savings and allowed us to close our remaining budget gap that existed as of April. Here you have another look at the major areas of spending. As you can see, the majority of our expenses are associated with the teaching learning process at over 58% of the budget. Next, we're going to take a look at revenues. So here you have the three major categories: state aid, tax levy, and other revenues. We're seeing major state aid reductions in building aid and then foundation aid. Building aid I spoke to, because we're seeing a reduction in expenditures, we'll then see a reduction in state aid revenue. Again, makes sense, but it is a reduction in revenue for the 2021 school year. Foundation aid reduction is more impactful, as that allows us more flexibility in how or where we spend the funding versus some of the other aid that we receive, which is very targeted. So that reduction in state aid has the greatest impact, negative impact, if you will. So the tax levy includes an increase of 1.95%. We were allowed to go as high as 4.55 per New York State, but the board is adopting a budget at 1.95%. And then other revenue and miscellaneous, this includes Federal CARES Act. So the federal government gave money to states, and the states then giving that to individual districts, and ours equates to $357,000. We have federal grants that were slated to receive $600,000. That is questionable at this time. It's always questionable as to if there'll be reductions, but certainly given the current situation that we are in, we could see a reduction in that area. And then reserve usage, we're using $440,000 from the reserve accounts, and pilots will be receiving $230,000 through those business agreements. So pandemic adjustments. So I spoke to some of the reductions that we're seeing this year, and some of those coming due to the pandemic situation we're in. So the governor reduced foundation aid funding from his original proposal in January, and in the final budget, we've gone back to the 2019 levels. So he came out with a slight increase in January's proposal, and then in the final budget that was approved in April, they reduced our funding from January to April and basically went level with what we received in 2019. So that reduction from January to April was about a $290,000 reduction. The governor then reduced the state aid further through the pandemic adjustment. So I recently spoke of the federal government providing funding to states and the states providing that to the districts. Our dollar amount was $357,000. So the funding that came from the federal government to the state then reduced their aid amount by that. So basically it zeroed out. So the federal monies were applied, the state took back that equal amount. The governor also reduced all schools' community set-aside funding by approximately $30,000. And then we've heard multiple times, as I spoke to in regards to the BK programming, multiple times we've heard reductions in our aid payments throughout the 2020 school year are possible. So you can see that we get our payments broken into periods from July 1 to December 31st, from April 1 to April 30th, and from May 1st to June 30th. So we could see a reduction in the aid we're supposed to receive in those different measurement periods. We have not seen this kind of reduction during the actual school year since the 1990-91 timeframe when Mario Cuomo was governor. Certainly the idea of them reducing our aid during the school year is a scary thought and would certainly be disruptive to students' programming. So we're not sure exactly if there will be reductions, and if so, when and how much. So we're best preparing for those situations, but difficult to do so. So then reductions to New York State aid. This chart shows a comparison from the 2019, which is the gray column, to 2020 state aid. The middle column showed the comparison in aid, as I spoke of earlier, from January's executive budget to the actual final budget approved in April. So you'll see there was a reduction in foundation aid from January to April of about $290,000. There was a reduction in building aid from 2019 to 2020 of over $1 million. And again, this was due to the district paying off a bond associated with a 2010 capital project. And then there's a reduction in transportation aid, and that's has to do with the building closures that we are currently facing and have done so since the middle of March. So transportation aid is an expense-based aid, so the amount you receive is based on the amount you spend. And so we know that we're spending less at this time for transportation, so we're going to receive less in 2020. But once again, it is a reduction in the 2020 school year as far as revenue is concerned. And then the Seneca Falls state aid factors. And specifically the foundation aid is what we're looking at as far as calculations. So our current poverty rate totals of 9% is based off of the 2000 census. SAPE, the Small Area Income and Poverty Estimates, is a more accurate measurement showing Seneca Falls at 15% poverty. The combined wealth ratio measurement shows Seneca Falls as a higher wealth area than it actually is, so the assessments outweigh the personal income. And then the free reduced price lunch shows Seneca Falls as a high needs district due to poverty, but the free and reduced price lunch calculation is not a highly used measure in the state's calculation. So district-wide, we are above 50% in our free and reduced price lunch, but because they don't use that to a great extent in the overall calculation, it puts the Seneca Falls School District as an average needs versus a high needs. If we were categorized as a high needs district, it would increase the amount of aid the district would be receiving. So the factors that they use versus, if you look at some of the numbers we shared, are if we use the free and reduced lunch, it shows our Seneca Falls at 15% poverty. So again, the calculations they use versus the reality of our situation don't necessarily align, which translates to less in state aid. And this just gives you a snapshot of the increase in the number of students receiving support when it comes to free and reduced price breakfast and lunch. And so you can see from 2011-12 through the 2019-20 school years, it's an 86% increase between those numbers. And again, so if we use this information to a greater extent in the overall state aid calculation, we would be considered a high needs district and receive more state aid. But that's not how it operates, and so we are still considered an average needs district, staying at the lower rate of the amount of state aid that we receive. And so this just looks at the aid formula, foundation aid amount times pupil needs times regional costs minus the contribution locally. So the foundation aid formula would work for Seneca Falls Central School District if the pupil needs categories would use more accurate numbers, again referring to that FRPL. So average, that would, difference of average needs versus a high needs district, or label, if you will, in the calculation for state aid formula. Looking at the property tax cap, a couple of the major categories that we'll focus on. So the tax base growth basically is limited growth. A 1.0 equals no growth. So Seneca Falls is looking at just a 0.0003 increase or growth, if you will. So that's minimal. For the allowable levy growth factor, the state requires us to use the consumer price index or 2%, whichever is lower. This year it is 1.81%. As you can see, it is not a 2% tax cap. And the district's tax levy cap is calculated at 4.55%, but the Board of Education has adopted a budget with a 1.95% tax increase. So the state said it could be as high as 4.55, but the board has adopted a budget with a 1.95% tax levy increase. So looking at district tax rates, the following chart shows the 3 townships in the district. The first 2 rows show the comparison of basic star and enhanced star for the 3 towns. Properties owned prior to 2015 received an exemption off their assessments. Ownership after 2015 of a property will see a star rebate check. Please note the difference in assessment levels. Fayette and Tyre recently completed a reevaluation in the past 2 years. Seneca Falls hasn't had an evaluation of assessments in several years, which is reflected in the decrease in level down to 89%. Due to the difference in assessment levels, Seneca Falls' tax rate is higher than the other 2 towns, which are at a true value rate. Final tax rates will be adopted by the Board of Education in August of 2020. So again, there you can see the tax rates as we know them for the 3 different townships. As far as fund balance and reserve usage, this is just a breakdown of how we plan to apply those reserve usage to the 2020-21 school year budget. So the appropriated fund balance, do not plan to apply any from that at this time. From the employee retirement system, $350,000. From workers' compensation, $40,000. That's a total of $390,000 from fund balance reserve usage being applied to balance the budget for the 2020-21 school year budget. If the budget were not to pass, per New York State law, we would go to a contingency budget. This chart reflects the potential contingency budget if the budget we're putting forth is voted down. The contingency budget shows a reduction of about $205,000 from the proposed spending budget for the 2021 school year. If the budget was voted down, the board has 3 different options. They could put that same budget out for a revote. They could reduce the budget and ask for a revote, or they can implement a contingency budget. So again, you could see it's about a 3.3% change in budget and about a $205,000 decrease from the proposed budget to the contingency budget. The first proposition being put up for vote is the $29,733,095 for the 2021 school year, and that would require a tax levy increase of 1.95%. The second proposition being put up for the 2021 school year is the vehicle purchases. So the proposition would be allow the district to spend up to $410,000 for buses and vans, and you can see a proposal here is for 3 buses and 1 passenger van. The third proposition, public library tax. So Seneca Falls Public Library tax levy shall the sum of $307,000 be raised by annual levy of a tax upon the taxable property within the Seneca Falls School District for the purpose of funding the Seneca Falls Public Library. The fourth proposition, there are 3 vacant seats available. The 3 candidates with the highest number of votes will have terms of 3 years starting July 1, 2020, and write-in votes are permissible. The 3 candidates on the ballot are Carol Lajewski, Joseph McNamara, and Heather Zellers. The candidates and information about each of them is accessible through the district website. So if you want to learn more about those 3 candidates, you can go to our website to do so. Reminder that the budget public hearing to start with. The public hearing is Tuesday, June 1st. That will be at 6 p.m. and will be virtual. The information for accessing that virtual public hearing will be made available in the near future on the district website. The budget vote will take place Tuesday, June 9th, 2020 by absentee ballot only. So again, the reason for the virtual public hearing and the vote being by absentee ballot only are due to the current pandemic COVID-19 situation. If you do not receive an absentee ballot as a qualified voter in the Seneca Falls Central School District by June 3rd, please contact the district office. Again, every eligible voter, qualified voter in the district should receive an absentee ballot. You should be able to vote. There'll be a self-stamped envelope in there for you to send that back to the district. The district must receive those votes by 5 p.m. June 9th. There will be a ballot box outside the district office if you are not able to get it in the mail in time, that you could drop that off here by 5 p.m. on June 9th. I want to thank again our entire community, as we appreciate your continued support of the district and all that we are doing for our students. Again, I hope you will vote for the school budget for the different propositions, including those running for the Board of Education. And again, I remind you that those ballots must be received by the district office June 9th, 5 p.m. Those ballots will be coming out to you via mail in the early part of June. Thank you.